we have both private and public sector leaders joining us for this conversation because I think it's really important to show the collaboration, the knowledge, the collaboration between both public and private sectors. So with that, why don't we just take 30 seconds each, kind of share a little bit about who you are, what you do, a fun fact maybe, and we'll just kind of go down the row. And then I'm going to start in with some questions about AI specifically. But Natalie, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I'm Natalie Buda Smith, Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress, which is in the legislative branch. A fun fact, I like strange musical instruments. I play harmonium and the marimba, so that's a fun fact about me.
Excellent. Excellent. I play the ukulele. I started to learn over COVID, so here we go. Matt.
I'm Matt Fraser. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for New York City. That sounds like technology. Some days it's tech, some days everything but tech. Fun fact is I also like instruments, piano and guitar in particular. And I've been working on computers since I was 6.
6. A long time. Great. Wole.
I'm Wole Moses. I'm the Chief AI Officer for Microsoft Federal Civilian. Thank you for having us here today. Jennifer, thank you for organizing government agencies and bringing us all together. Thank you also for bringing Microsoft and Google together on stage. Fun fact about me is I also started playing around with computers, not when I was 6, but when I was 8 years old.
Awesome. I'm Elizabeth Moon. Nice to meet everyone. I lead Google Public Sector's customer engineering team. These are really the technology folks who are part of our go-to-market sales organization. So we have the best job getting to solve all kinds of challenges and help our customers understand new use cases, show the art of the possible through our technology. Let's see. Congrats, by the way, on the launch, Jennifer. Very excited to be here and be part of bringing this to the community. Fun fact about me, I have 3 teenage daughters. I spend most of my free time trying to track them. They're all in college now. So I've discovered that my deep research skills can be useful for tracking my kids all over.
That's a good parenting tool as well. Parenting technology. Excellent. Nishant, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nishant. I'm a Senior Advisor for Responsible AI for the state of Maryland. So I lead all the work around AI enablement in the state. Fun fact, I'm about to become a first-time parent. So I'm going to take your advice there. And yeah, let's see how it works.
So we can, I'm available anytime.
Excellent. Excellent. Nishant, why don't we start with you? We've talked a little bit about, you've heard throughout the conversation so far this morning, the rapid pace, light speed, AI is moving so quickly. I won't ask you to predict kind of where AI will be in 3 years or even 1 year.
I won't answer that.
Exactly. I know better to ask that question. But I would love to hear you share kind of the trends that you're seeing in AI and specifically AI adoption in government and what you do see kind of in the next 3, 6, and 9 months.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I found really interesting is, I'm part of this group of 20 to 25 states, and the equivalent of me in those states sort of gets together monthly to talk about what are we seeing, what's happening, what are our frustrations, what are the constraints. One of the really heartening things has been sort of less and less reinvention of the wheel. On a continual basis. I started this role 1.5 years ago, and everyone's creating their own policies and sort of doing the same set of things, just copy and paste again and again and again. And there's much more collaboration happening between states, between municipalities, between levels of government to help us all move faster. So I think folks are getting a bit more sophisticated, and we're moving beyond sort of just talking about principles and approaches here to actually being in the weeds of operationalizing this technology, understanding operating models, doing proofs of concept and sort of running those proofs of concept into scaled production systems, sort of the learning by doing. And we're in the midst of that rather than a year ago where, we were sort of just deer in headlights, what should we be doing?
Yeah, that's great. So the collaboration piece and the learning by doing. Matt, Nishant just mentioned the collaboration between state, local, federal. do you have some thoughts about kind of the trends that you're seeing in the next 3, 6, 9 months leading of technology for New York City, for a huge city, state AI expert, city AI expert?
So when we look at anything that's coming in the emerging tech space, uh, I spent a little brief stint at Gartner, so I picked up a lot of their lingo somewhere along the way. But they have this thing that's pretty cool, and it's called it's about
Mhm.
technology when it enters the market, right? And it's like when technology comes in, it's the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and the slope of enlightenment. And I think for us, what we've sort of struggled with, like with any new technology, it's like everyone believes that anything that says AI or has AI in it means that it's better, and they don't spend enough time understanding the use cases. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to become much better at adopting commercial that's mainstream in the private sector today. So when you look at public services and things like our contact centers, in New York City, we have probably the nation's largest information line in our quality of life line 311. Someone calls about potholes, trash collection pickup, over millions of interactions over the year. And over 70% of the calls that come in are information requests, not for the agency to do a service, but just on how to navigate the bureaucracy of the city. So if we can leverage AI in spaces like that and make that, which is a commodity tool in the private sector, in the public
Mhm.
sector, I think for us, that's where we're going to see a lot of growth. And again, in areas where we've adopted AI for a long time, like cybersecurity, that'll continue to be an emerging area.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. Elizabeth, some thoughts from the private sector perspective in working across the public sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said, Matt. I think, you know, AI assistance with constituent questions is certainly an area that we see as a big trend. Google commissioned a study with IDC end of last year, surveyed about 161 AI leaders across federal primarily. 50% actually came back and said they believe that the AI organizations are very mature at this point. So we've come a long way in the last couple of years. And I think to
That's a
your
short amount of time, just the last couple of years.
it really is. Really, this technology is gaining steam super quickly. We did another study recently with GovExec. 94% of those surveys, this was primarily in state and local, indicated they do see more AI use over the next 1 to 2 years. Of course, that's no surprise. But we published a blog. I published a blog earlier in February. Couple of key things in addition to the AI constituent kind of assistance, like Matt was talking about, dramatically helping people get to the right information very quickly, and websites, reducing, call center times, or even the need to go to a call center is one area we called out. The tools are getting a lot better. AI models are getting a lot better. Our latest family of Gemini models, we call it multimodal from the ground up, natively multimodal, which means that you can actually ask one model lots of different questions. Analyze this video for me, summarize this document, translate it into 100+ different languages, generate some code for me. All that interaction supported by one multimodal model is going to increase the number of use cases that can be more easily supported by the organizations. So if you think about analyzing sort of weather patterns across, geo data, we have very large data sets in Google that we make available to our public sector customers for things like weather, climate analysis and so on. Those kinds of use cases are getting easier and easier to adopt. And then another example, of course, is going to be agentic AI. AI agents are going to be, permeated. And I look at, I've been in technology a long time. I think it's sort of, we've been talking a lot about microservices the last decade of development. And now I think you're going to see AI agents really embedded within different applications to be able to reimagine different parts of business processes. You think about, the FOIA process. We're building an AI agent right now with one customer to really dramatically simplify the work that the agency, workers have to do to automatically redact information and process FOIA requests much more seamlessly. So just some quick examples of how we see, AI kind of right now, really in the next, few months being used.
Right. And I have a feeling we're going to hear more about it as the morning
Hopefully.
goes on. Wole, kind of on the same line of question, this has to do with, can you share one or two examples? Elizabeth just mentioned use cases. Can you share one or two examples of, where AI is being used within government operations to increase and improve public service delivery?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with agencies in the federal government for the past 2 years to learn about AI together, to ideate about AI, to do proofs of concepts, and that's culminated in a lot of really exciting production AI applications. And we've been impressed because many of those ideas have come from agencies themselves. And so if I try to boil it down in terms of the core use cases, uh, agencies are using AI to analyze, they're using AI to modernize, and they're using AI to improve citizen engagement. So in terms of analyzing, we're seeing a lot of use cases around, just think about all of the information, the documents, and all of the unstructured data within any agency. Generative AI is an amazing solution in helping agencies reason over and make sense of that data. In terms of specific use cases, we're seeing agencies use generative AI to analyze public comments as part of the rulemaking process, something that previously took a human to do, to read through those comments, assess those comments, summarize, and do some sentiment analysis around those comments. That's just one example. Another example is around, Department of Interior, we work with them to use AI to do grant application scoring as called for by OMB rules. So yeah, lots of use cases around using AI. And one other I'll call out is contracts. And so there's an agency we partner with, they have thousands of contracts. They wanted to pull out some specific information and insights from all those contracts and do some reporting around those. And so they used AI and they took that process from months. AI took that process from months to weeks. So massive amount of time savings. Second thing I talked about is modernizing. So a lot of legacy applications in the federal government context, both desktop applications all the way to mainframe applications. And so we work with an agency that focuses on government statistics. They have some legacy desktop applications using very niche language, a niche programming language that only statisticians use. They use generative AI to modernize that application, bring it into, modernize it into Python actually, and then mainframes. So mainframes, another example of legacy applications existing in the federal government, written in COBOL. My mom was a COBOL programmer in the 80s. She has since retired, as have most COBOL programmers. And so agencies are finding that generative AI has been an amazing tool to, first of all, help them understand what's happening in that code and then take it into a modern language. The last category I talked about was improving citizen engagement. And so we're seeing a lot of different examples. Matt talked about an example that is in use in New York City in terms of a chatbot agency. We're working with agencies to do some similar things. But my favorite example is an agency that was dealing with long call center volumes, and they were getting a lot of complaints from citizens, from Congress, and from citizen advocacy groups around the long call wait times. But they didn't ever really have an understanding about what was driving those wait times because they had hundreds of thousands of calls and they didn't have the people power to listen to all those calls. And so they use our technology to, first of all, take those call center calls to transcribe them to text. And then they use generative AI to reason over hundreds of thousands of calls. And for the first time ever, they gained an understanding about the patterns of these calls, why are people calling into the call center. And the last thing I'll share is what they learned in this particular case is that this particular agency sends out lots of notices to citizens. And number one reason people were call centers because they didn't understand the notices. The notices weren't written well. And so as part of what I call cycle, the agency is now going to use generative AI to read notices to make them more understandable. So those are just a few examples.
Thank you. So we've shared, in use cases in the world of AI, right? You're starting small, you test and learn, test and learn, test and learn, adjust, test and learn, test and learn, test and learn, adjust, maybe adjust along the way after each test and learn. We've shared and the panelists have shared some of the the benefits and the use cases that are making an incredible difference today. And I think this is the testing and learning piece. So I'd love to speak with and ask this question of our state and local and federal leaders. With the vision of AI, right? We understand and see the effectiveness that it's driving, the human in the loop importance. With that vision, what is one practical step for leaders in the room today to take to overcome challenges that come up with AI? So kind of maybe one or two practical takeaways. And Natalie, I'll start with you.
Sure. That's a big question. So what?
Answer
No, no. So
Doesn't take 2 hours.
one of the, so
It
I'm at
shouldn't
the
take 2 hours.
Library of Congress. And one of our challenges is we manage over 193 petabytes of data. And a big part of that data is legislative data, but our collections make up the majority of that. So people rely on federal agencies to be authentic and authoritative. So you definitely need humans in the loop for that. So one step is really to start, like you were saying, iteratively. So really pick a core workflow and determine how to fit an AI service in that workflow. A lot of us think of, an AI just being a generative AI chatbot, but actually there's a lot of AI services that we use already. For example, Library of Congress has been using AI for quite a long time in digitization, right? Computer vision, NLP, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, those sorts of things. So thinking through the workflow and how can you fit AI into that workflow. And it doesn't have to be a chatbot. It doesn't have to be generative AI. It could be natural language processing. And then have the staff think through, how do I make that workflow more effective? Because that's really where you're going to make a lot of progress. And staff are experts, and they will often look at the workflow and go, oh, if I had NLP here, I could probably do some automation around workflow assignment, for example. Someone mentioned patent and trademark. We also have the U.S. Copyright Office. So there's a lot of examination in the federal government. So you could use NLP to do those automated workflow assignments instead of having a manager do it, for example. So those staff in the workflow can look at their workflow and decide what AI services could I use in that workflow to really drive a lot of efficiencies. So it doesn't have to be this big bang, chat interface. Actually, it could be more effective for your organization to fit an AI service in the workflow and then use humans in the loop. So, and because our staff are experts and they can provide that authenticity, that authority, that this information that we're delivering to the public is correct, they can start to think, how do I fit there? So they get the upskilling. They get to feel like they are a part of this investment and you're driving efficiency. So that's how I would start working towards that challenge of when we do deliver services to the public, they need to be correct. So have the staff in the workflow start to design how to improve with AI services.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
So I'd say the recommendation I would have is to be bold. And those of you that are leaders in the room that lead teams that run transformation programs, you have to dare to be bold. When you come from organizations that have over a century of inertia that running behind it, there's a lot of risk adversity that goes with doing anything new. And at your first hurdle, your first stumble, someone goes, oh, you see, that didn't work the way it was supposed to, tear it out, right? I think for us, one of the lessons that I learned very quickly is being bold and backing the decisions that you made, but using results to reinforce that decision over time. When we released a chatbot, one of the things that happened was we released a chatbot focused on our small business community. We said after COVID for New York City, rebuilding the business economy, rebuilding jobs in New York City was a very big thing for us. And a large supporter of jobs is small businesses within the city. So what could we do to get those businesses back up and running? And what could we do to get people that were interested in building a business the access to what they need so they could start? So one of the things that we quickly found out was that our small business community and everything in New York City's government is very difficult to navigate. So we built a chatbot that could answer any question that one of our call center agents could answer, but also can provide supplemental information outside of the city. So to our other regulatory authorities like the state. And within, I'd say, 2 weeks of launching the chatbot, there was an article that came out that said New York City's chatbot tells restaurant owners that it's okay to take tip money from their employees. Now, anyone that's reasonable would know that that's not something that we would push, but what happened was they found a glitch where they could ask a question, they could get a hallucination back, and it would provide bad feedback. So what that came out, we got from our local city council, we got from other folks, like, the technology doesn't work, we should tear it down. And I said to that, that's a joke, right? We've served daily over 5,000 people from the first week of launch. 5,000 people per day that were accessing the chatbot and getting good information. But you had a couple of people that got one bad query. That's not means for us to take it down. It's means for us to make it better. So within 2 weeks, we do a refinement, we push another release, and now the hallucinations that people saw are not there anymore, and the system is better. So when I say dare to be bold, I think even for our own teams, that boldness doesn't come just on defending on the front line, but it's also pushing your teams to embrace new technology, not for their sake, but for the sake of the people that they serve. When we do stuff like this and we make government more efficient, we provide more benefits to people that need it when they need it. And it's the difference between getting someone access to a resource so they don't do something that puts them and someone else in harm's way. So when we look at leveraging new technology, we look at and I look at what it means for us in New York City. It means that we've got to be bold, and we've got to be bold in both how we push our investments forward on the outside, but how we motivate our teams on the inside to actually get behind that build.
Yeah, thank you. Be bold. We heard a lot of the workflow piece, human in the loop. Nishant, thoughts?
First, 100% to all of that, it's, plus one. I look at this from an enablement perspective, which is we have 40 agencies with radically different missions and approaches and goals and problems and 100,000 staff. How do we get them from, understanding their problems in depth to understanding what is an AI-shaped problem to then being able to execute with confidence, either build versus buy decisions or sort of go from, a use case or a solution request through to, having tool in hands and being able to use it effectively. One of the challenges there has been this tension between governance and adoption, like rapid adoption, right? Like think of this as like a continuum, essentially. Where you can have really heavy governance and it can take a long time to get through, and you do deep due diligence, and that's a fantastic thing. But it's also a moral question. I mean, people are not getting services that they need today, and these technologies can help them get access to those services more quickly. So it is also a moral thing that we need to get them to the hands of people quickly. So how do we find the right sort of place on that spectrum? Our perspective is just to make radically clear what is a low and what is a higher risk use case. Have a really clear playbook that all agencies can use. And if it is a low risk use case, I mean, go forth and conquer, and we'll do everything we can to help sort of agencies adopt that set of technologies. We have sort of product and governance folks that can sort of embed with them and take a sort of like an incubation type of approach. But for the ones that are higher risk, like, okay, great. Like people know that's higher risk going into it. They built in the timeframes. We do like red teaming and, have the right set of sort of governance pathways to ensure low risk to the folks adopting it. So from a tactical perspective, like make very clear where you can move fast and just get tools in people's hands. It's the best way to people to learn.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So with time for 2 more questions, I wanted to ask, without getting too technical, and Natalie, I'm going to start with you and then come to Elizabeth. How should agencies assess their data readiness? Because data isn't something that we've talked about so far today. And I make an assumption that, and I shouldn't assume, right? Data goes hand in hand with AI. You can't have one without the other. You certainly can't have AI without data. So that's why I wanted to ask this question about kind of data readiness and how can agencies kind of ensure that that their data readiness is top notch, so that the data is in a place that you can actually do something with it in terms of the artificial intelligence piece to create effectiveness and to create benefits for citizens.
Right. Ensure is a tough word, but I'll start with I think much like my other piece about workflow, if a data-driven organization or a data-first organization, you most likely have a wide variety of information. So you have PDFs, you have, paper archives, you have some data. So if you don't have
And have data in different databases that
yes.
don't talk to each other.
Yes, exactly. I'm lucky at the Library of Congress, again, 193 petabytes of data, but we also are working hard on that effort. And so I'm not a big fan of saying, oh, let's just start overall agency-wide data governance and work our way down. You can start thinking about that, but I would say pick a domain, pick a data set, and then look at that data set. It's really important to capture provenance, because when we're starting to use these models and either refine them or use RAG or train them further, it's important for public sector to actually capture the information about the data that we're using. You need to also consider the metadata. I like to say I live in a metadata paradise. I mean, that's basically what the Library of Congress does. So it's not only the data, but it's the metadata that needs to be considered. So you do have to prepare data sets and then manage those data sets, inventory those data sets. And one thing so again, I would pick a domain. So for example, we have a lot of legislative data. That is a domain. Pick a data set. So I might pick data from the last Congress, for example, and then start to prepare that data set for use in a lot of these tools. And then you'll have lessons learned. You'll have structures that you want to repeat and share. Have a community of practice, grow that community of practice in your organization. There's probably more standards and policies and guidance, and then build up. So really having a good model, and then lessons learned, teach the teacher, that all those things come in it. But another thing that we don't talk a lot about is data storage. So it's not only data sets, preparation of data sets, but it's also where are you storing this data? And so there's a term now that all data is good, right? Because a lot of these models are consuming so much data. You can use this data. You can produce synthetic data, but you need to have a plan for data storage, because this gets really, really expensive depending on how large your endeavor is. So thinking about what is we like to say hot, warm, cold, frozen data, and how do you manage that data across, and thinking about how are you going to store this data. A lot of times you'll train a data, you'll use a model, and then that model will be out of date and you'll want to move to another model, but most likely you're going to want to preserve that. So you're going to be generating a lot of data. So how do you create programs that not only create data sets that are ready for AI, but also store and manage those new data sets, those new models moving forward, because this is going to be very expensive.
Yeah. Additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Natalie, just to build on some of what you said, I think you're spot on in terms of, defining the scope and starting with one area. We find a lot of times working with customers that incremental progress, incremental projects that have nice wins over periods of time is really helpful to get momentum and build confidence. And some of your data sources are probably safe to start with. We just announced a product called Agent Space that really think of it as your agentic AI sort of launch point, builds on top of our Vertex AI search platform, which we recently announced FedRAMP High accreditation. The Agent Space tool that we've developed not only has the ability to do summarization, interact with all different kinds of documents, images, PDFs, spreadsheet information, but we also have built in a series of connectors to common data sets. So you don't absolutely have to move all of your data in order to get the value out of that. That's groundbreaking. So you can connect to a, Salesforce, a Jira site, perhaps a legacy SharePoint site that all of your data is brought together by the AI. And the models are just getting so much better to be able to read across all those different types of, data and bring back to control search result. And then, by the way, you can start to take action on the data, which is really exciting. So I think having some, that kind of use case, which is really geared towards employee productivity, can be a good one to start with and get you nice quick wins. Hey, I'm seeing more of this data show up in my day-to-day. I have to go less places. I'm not going to 5 different places to find it. And then you can click right into the links and get to the, to the deeper information. Is a good complement to sort of the, we do work with customers a lot who want to make sure that they understand the data governance and lineage. We've got great tools to, organize, centralize, and then I think to your point, Natalie, cost-effective storage. We have automated retention policies that we can help customers with. These are good complements to sort of, make a project successful by showing those kind of milestone moments and key wins, early.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. With just a couple minutes left in the panel, and I'm going to come to each one of you. So be thinking about this. If you had kind of 1 or 2 takeaways for the leaders in the room, what would be, and it could be something that we've already discussed, right? It could be something that you think, I mentioned it once or twice. I'm going to say it a 3rd time because everyone in this room needs to hear it one more time. That's okay. If you started out, and again, if you had kind of 1 or 2 as a leader, whether you're a technical leader, a non-technical leader, you're directly involved in AI, you're tangentially involved, indirectly involved in AI, which all leaders today, by the way, are involved in AI. So what would kind of those 1 or 2 tips, key takeaways for those in the room? Wole, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to kind of zigzag back and forth.
Sure. So I would say a couple of things. So first of all, there's a human element as well. So I'd say be empathetic.
Yes.
AI and generative AI in particular are new for folks. And so there are a lot of what I call human and sort of sociological things that need to be thought through in terms of everyone doesn't trust AI. There's lots of doubts around, is this trustworthy? There are fears and concerns around, is this technology being used to replace me? And so having empathy and having a strategy that accounts for those thoughts, I think, is important. And then the other thing I would say is training. So again, just with the newness of the technology, training is super important. There will be inconsistent use of the technology within organizations. You'll always have power users, but the vast majority will still be struggling to figure out how to make sense of the technology. So training, basic training and general training like on AI literacy is important. But then I'd also say the other place we're seeing agencies be successful is around doing functional training and role-specific training. So for example, State of Texas Department of Transportation rolled out Microsoft 365 Copilot. And one of the things that they did is they took a very thoughtful approach. They did the basic training on how to use Copilot to summarize meetings and to create emails, but then they also looked at some of the individual roles like audit, compliance, Office of Communication, procurement, many of which map very well to government agencies. And they showed those folks how to use Copilot to do things like create position descriptions and classifications for the folks in HR, how to analyze contracts for folks in procurement. And so the basic sort of AI literacy training is important, but then also the role specific and functional training, ensuring that the technology fits into the way that folks work, I think is the other thing I would call out.
Yeah, thank you. Empathy, which we haven't talked about today. So thank you for bringing that up. It's critical. Not everyone is AI forward leaning. It is new to so many people. The percentages, right? More than 80% of the US population isn't yet comfortable with artificial intelligence. So the empathy piece and the training, the ongoing training, and thank you for breaking it down into kind of two pieces of training, the daily training and the functional training. I'm gonna, Nishant, thoughts about kind of your one or two
Yeah.
takeaways.
I'd say use this moment. I think we're in a very interesting window right now, and it's maybe a few year period where there's really interesting creative partnerships that are possible at this moment that may not be possible 5 years from now, that weren't possible certainly a few years ago. Of course, being the guy from Maryland, I'm going to bring up The Wire. And, you know, I don't know if you guys remember like season 5 of The Wire, where McNulty, who's like the protagonist, gets all this money and sort of is making up fake cases and allocating it to places to solve real things that are there. I'm not saying AI is a set of fake cases, but what I am saying is that there is like this Eye of Sauron that's on this right now, and you get a lot of attention and a lot of momentum leveraging this moment. Some of it is hype and some of it is, most of it is real. And so use it to like do things that otherwise you couldn't do and move in your agency, like fix the foundations. This is the time, you know, like get your third-party risk management and your privacy approaches and your data governance and all that good stuff that maybe you've been trying to do for 10 years, but you just haven't had the ability to do it. Like there are sets of momentum you can leverage right now in your agencies and your places that by using the word AI that, you know, you couldn't necessarily do before. So use this moment.
Sets of momentum, use the moment. And you also slipped in a Lord of the Rings reference. Nicely done. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, and then Matt, and then Natalie.
Sure.
Do it a little bit rapid fire.
Okay. I think I've been in technology a long time. I've been through lots of different shifts of new technology. Getting started, just get started, pick a project, jump in. We are here to help at Google. We recently completed a prototype with the New York MTA on predictive train maintenance. It's a great example. We analyzed 335 million pieces of information by putting pixel phones into trains just to do the prototype, get all kinds of vibration and sensor, you know, sound with the sensors that allowed us to help predict train track anomaly, to help prevent sort of how much time the manual train inspectors have to go out, you know, into the tunnels and take trains offline. It's a really exciting prototype around preventive maintenance and the AI capabilities that we're bringing there. What I love about the approach we took is we worked side by side with our customer in the great city of New York and, you know, really helped to, you know, establish a new way of thinking about, you know, this type of really important, impactful project. We've got other examples where we've done this. We've rolled out, you know, adjudication AI assistance for one of our state and local customers. And in that case, you know, as soon as we started rolling out and working on the prototype, individuals were coming up to the key sponsors at the customer. I've got a great idea for a Gen AI use case. I've got a great idea for a Gen AI use case in my department. And so once you start with one project, you'll start to get momentum, good wins, some good insight into how this technology can be used across different parts of the agency. And it just helps to kind of create that momentum that people interested and start using and experimenting with the technology themselves.
Thank you. So Matt.
I'd say I'm gonna pick back up where I started this. Be bold. Be bold. And what I'd say, my late Uncle Ben told me, with great power comes great responsibility.
Look at you. Look at you.
Yeah, but seriously, as you look to invest, you have to
Spider-Man
right?
reference.
Yeah.
In case anyone didn't know.
That was Peter Parker, not me. But you know, the same lessons are applicable here. I'd say as you invest, be bold, but also be smart and build a team around you that can help rationalize the investments that you're about to make. One of the things that we did in New York City, as before we started having a serious conversation publicly around what we did with AI, we built a plan and we built a strategy around how we were going to approach it. And one of the things that we said was we don't want to be in a space where we tried to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to be in a space where we could adopt what was already going and enhance it and refine it for New York City's needs. And the way we did that is we created an AI action plan. And there was two key parts of that plan that was very important. is we created an AI advisory council where we have representation from Google, Microsoft, and many others that help us look at the investments that we're about to make and give recommendations in the directions that we're going to go. And then from within the city, we created a council of subject matter experts for specific verticals. So if you look at a city like New York, I mean, we are over 1 million endpoints. We're the 12th largest economy globally, and we spend somewhere around 160 billion a year on all, but 9 billion specifically in tech. But when you look at all of that spend, what does that go to, and how does it help the average person in New York City? One of the cool things that we're currently working on, and this is where I say be smart and have a team that can support you. Public benefits is one of the things that that gets highly scrutinized because no matter how fast you do it, it's not fast enough. So one of the things that we said recently was like, instead of trying to chase the application after it comes in, what if we get ahead of the application before someone submits it? So if you apply for childcare or you apply for financial assistance, I know information about you. I know about information about who's in your household. I know ages. I know location. I know family status. How come I can't do eligibility determinations and give you a pre-approval for public benefit? So if we can learn from what our peers have done in the financial space, everyone, you open up your email and you get a notice that you're pre-approved for a card, apply by this state, provide this information, you're guaranteed to get this amount. We want to do the same thing for public benefits. You apply for childcare, we now know that you also are eligible for these things if you can provide us that piece of information. This is where the data becomes incredibly important, right? You have to understand, like, the fact is, in a city like New York, we have over 70 different agencies that do tons of different things. But getting a common understanding of how we view a single person in a single household is incredibly difficult. And what we've done across our health and human services agencies, we've said, when we talk about people, we only talk about them in one way. When we talk about houses, we only talk about them in one way. When we talk about businesses, we only talk about it in one way. And by doing that, being able to attach people to better services and do those pre-approvals is now becoming a thing that we can actually deliver on. So I'd say be bold and think about things in ways that the private sector has been incredibly successful at, and looking at how you can adopt that for public sector use case, but also be responsible, be smart, and make sure that you have a team of people around you that can help support those decisions. And in the event that you're coming off the guardrails, help pull you back on.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So as we wrap up this incredibly insightful panel, a couple of pop culture references snuck in there. I love it. No pressure on the pop culture reference as we close things out. But Natalie, I think it's important from a federal perspective. You lead all digital, Library of Congress, huge job. What are some, 1 or 2 takeaways that you'd really love for this room to know?
I have 3, but I'm gonna be short
3,
about it.
excellent.
Okay. Curiosity.
Mhm.
One, your Curiosity AI Center. Being here, it's wonderful to have a curiosity and really, but also fostering curiosity and staff. Very important communication, collaboration. So curiosity is very important. History is very important. I find comfort, my staff found comfort in history. When you think about the Library of Congress, which was founded in 1800, and how we used to collect and manage materials back then to how we're doing it today, we've made major transformations in the last 2 centuries. We'll continue to. There's some comfort in that. This is not all new in the sense that we have been disrupted, we have transformed before. So history, especially of your organization, you might find that there. And then expertise in that you're probably using AI right now in your organization, maybe in a way you're not aware of. It's embedded in these tools that are on your laptop. So how do you help staff use their expertise? A lot of, from the federal angle, a lot of federal staff have amazing domain expertise that is irreplaceable. So how do you take their expertise and use it with these AI services and to make these outcomes even better?